The sports world just can't stop watching Caitlyn Clark, can't stop talking about Caitlyn Clark, can't stop debating about Caitlyn Clark. And it's not just basketball. There have been questions of race and sexuality and politics swirling around her. The stories just don't seem to stop. No one knows that better, or is better equipped to explain it all, than ESPN's Michael Voepel. He's been covering women's basketball for decades, and he's joining us to talk, of course, about Caitlyn Clark on the Jenni Carlson Show. But before we get to that, I want to encourage you to subscribe. First to my YouTube channel, at Jenni-Carlson. Just hit that subscribe button. It's easy, it's free, but it helps me a bunch. Then I hope you'll subscribe to my Substack, jennicarlson.substack.com. You can subscribe for free, or if you want to support my work with a paid subscription, those start at just $8 a month. I hope you'll consider subscribing no matter what level. Well, Michael Voepel, I am so glad you're here. We have known each other for years. It's been way too long since we've had a chance to sit and chat about basketball, though.
Yeah, I was thinking when we first met, I believe you were a senior at the University of Kansas as our Kansas City Star Kansas correspondent.
Yes,
so
correct.
It's been a minute that we've known each other.
I was there when Marion Washington was there, and she loved you even though you're a Missouri grad. So, you know.
This is true. She was able to overlook that fatal flaw.
She loved you regardless. So, yeah, but women's basketball, we know you have been covering it for decades, and I know that you've seen all sorts of big moments in this sport, but obviously this whole Caitlyn Clark thing is just next level for the entire sport. And right now, everybody is talking about USA basketball team for the Olympics, Caitlyn being left off. You've heard from a variety of people, including Jen Rosati, who picked the team. What's your sense of what this came down to for Caitlyn Clark not making this Olympic team?
You know, Jenny, they went with experience and people had had a lot of time on the national team. And that answer doesn't go over well with people who just wanted to see Caitlyn Clark on the team. She is the most popular women's basketball player right now in terms of the general population. People are just very intrigued to watch her. She's a fun player to watch. She's coming off, obviously, a great college career where, I mean, let's be honest, she scored more points than anybody in Division I history. And she just kept rising to the occasion, right? Was able to get, 2 Final Four appearances in, was the number 1 draft pick. So there's a lot of reasons people want to see her that are very legitimate reasons. The issue we have, and Jenny, you know this as well as anybody, because for as long as you've been following women's sports, there's probably no deeper team in the world than the USA national women's basketball team, and it's been that way a long time. So what they ended up going with was the idea of experience, and particularly experience on the senior national team, and that's the group that they have now for the first time ever, and that's going back to 1976 when women's basketball became an Olympic sport. U.S. does not have a single player under 25 on this team. So they said, I talked to Jen Rosati this morning. She said, we didn't talk about age. But that is something I think people are going to be thinking about, that this team decided to go older. Now, it's not old. You've got a couple of 26-year-olds, but still, first time ever, you don't have one of those young players who's getting her feet wet, so to speak. And we've had that before on almost every Olympic team. Here's the thing that people never want to hear, and you know this as a columnist. Boy, do you know this. People never want to hear nuance.
No.
And they almost never want to hear that there was no easy answer. But that's the case here. Some people are going to say, oh, it was really easy, slam dunk, Caitlyn Clark. If you do that, you're going to be leaving out somebody who has earned a spot. And you're going to be taking something away, but you're going to be adding something. Instead, what they didn't add was a Caitlyn Clark factor. I'm not saying that's insignificant, because I think it is. But it wasn't like, boy, did they really screw this up, so much as, boy, did they face a conundrum. They made a choice, and now we'll see how that goes forward.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, because for all the people that are saying, well, Caitlyn Clark deserves a spot, well, somebody else has to be removed from the 12 if she's on there. There doesn't seem to be an obvious removal. I mean, they're all fantastic. Like you say, I mean, you could pick the next 12 best players in the pool and probably have the best team going to the Olympics. But the 12 that they pick, is there an area where you feel like maybe Caitlyn Clark, the experience factor being one thing, but was there anything that you feel like looking at who they did pick that maybe, parts of her game, just areas that maybe in another 4 years as she continues to evolve and get better, maybe those are the areas that we'll see her, fill in. I don't know. What do you think about just the guard skill that they have on that Olympic roster and where maybe she was a little bit lacking?
I think that's a great point, is that the guards were particularly strong this year. Really strong. You have everybody who's a guard who made this team has played a pretty significant time on the national team. Now, Sabrina Ionescu didn't win. She wasn't in the Olympics back in 2021, but she's been with the national team since then, and she's having a really good season. And she's an excellent guard. She's one of the young, at 26, she and Jackie Young are the youngest on this team. Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum both won Olympic gold on the 3-on-3 team. Now, we'll just get to the elephant in the room, which a lot of people are talking about. Diana Taurasi, who turns 42 today, June 11th. Did she need to be on her 6th Olympic team? And a lot of people are going to say that's where this selection went wrong, to say she's had 5 Olympics. They won a world championship 2 years ago without Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi. Was it time to move on? And one of the issues with that, and I can see that argument, I really can. One of the issues is how much time Diana Taurasi has spent with the national team for the last 20 years. How much does that leadership mean to this team? Were they ready to move on without it? She's been at so many camps, and that's not an insignificant thing, because you are taking a risk at camp. Anytime you're a professional athlete and you go somewhere to compete, there's a potential you could get injured. If you go to USA basketball camp, and it has happened to people, you get injured, that could take money out of your pocket for playing internationally or playing in the WNBA. So those are risks that we've had the senior women's national team be willing to take over decades now. So that's why it's hard, I think, for USA basketball to tell a Diana Taurasi, hey, we're done. You've had 5. We're done. We're ready to move on. That's hard too. And again, Jenni, that's where we're seeing these, when these arguments take place on Twitter, it's just, oh, they don't need her. She's not that good anymore, and all this stuff. And you're ignoring a lot of the factors about the culture of the team, about the time she spent with the team, what she means to other players, what she means to Cheryl Reeve, the coach. There wasn't an easy choice to take anybody off this team for Caitlyn Clark.
And I think about Diana Taurasi, obviously, great player, has been a, world-class player, but what a leader. I mean, I know a lot of people have boiled down the Caitlyn Clark argument to, is this a basketball decision, or is this, chemistry question? Is there jealousy? Is this an issue of race or politics? There's all sorts of issues that, as you alluded to, the Twitter sphere, I mean, it goes all over the place. But chemistry and leadership is no small thing. And I'm not saying that it's not there if Caitlyn Clark is included, but Diana Taurasi's leadership is no small thing. How much, people might want to trivialize chemistry or any of that, but how much of that is important in this whole thing?
The reason, maybe the biggest reason it's important, is the U.S. team always has the least amount of time to prepare, compared to usually other countries. Because most of really all of our athletes now, meaning the United States athletes that are going to be on the women's Olympic team, are going to be WNBA players. So they're going to be playing in the WNBA. They're limited in terms of their time to have camps, right? Because of WNBA season. They have a series of camps, and if through no fault of her own, Caitlyn Clark can't take part in any of those camps. She's in the middle of her season with Iowa, and then the very last camp of all was during the Final Four, and she was playing in the Final Four. So it really wasn't her fault. I don't know there's anything she could have done different in this, because, she didn't have the opportunity to play with these folks. And you look back on other selections that were rookies, that happened to be rookies in an Olympic year. Taurasi's one of them in 2004. Candace Parker in 2008. They didn't take Nneka Ogwumike. By the way, a very sore spot for me that Nneka Ogwumike has never made an Olympic team. I think that's the greatest stain on USA basketball ever. And I do not pull punches on that one. They messed up with that. They've never had Nneka, and she's never going to play on an Olympic team, and that's a real shame. But 2016, they take Breanna Stewart. In all those cases, those players did have a chance to play with the senior national team. So they were rookies, but they had a little bit more experience. Again, you could go so granular on this, Jenni, about talking about how, what years people, what years they happen to be WNBA rookies, versus when they, like if you're a WNBA rookie and you're 3 years away from the Olympics, you didn't have the chance. So that's part of the dialogue is just she happened to be, in an Olympic year, be a rookie, and this popular of a rookie.
As you talked about the fact that this team will not include a 25 or younger player, it strikes me that it's not just Caitlyn Clark right now, it's Angel Reece. It's a long list of really good rookies in the WNBA, but also players coming up through the college ranks. Juju Watkins is the top of my mind as I think about that next group. Is this maybe a inflection point for USA women's basketball? This roster that's got some of those really long-term veterans, but next Olympics, 28, it's LA. Is that a new age of USA women's basketball as we think about a roster that likely will include Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reece? Is this an inflection point for USA basketball?
I think so. And it's funny because over the years we've kind of thought, hey, is this the new look team? And yet it's never quite the new look team because unlike the men's game, and there's really good reasons for this, you don't necessarily have players who play 3 and 4 and 5 Olympics. And we have somebody with 6 Olympics. Lisa Leslie was in 4 Olympics. Teresa Edwards was in 5. So it's one thing is interesting to me when you think about the culture is you literally have players who have a connection to players that are like 20 years older than them because they played with somebody who played with somebody who played with somebody. Yeah. And that is a big part of USA basketball culture. But to your point, we have a really great sophomore class, the incoming sophomore class with the Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo and so many other players. I mean, I can't even name them all because we had such a good freshman class this past year. And they're all going to be, looking for USA basketball spots. So that's a good thing. And they're all going to be coming into a WNBA that by the time they come in, it's going to have 2 more teams. So and one of them is an international team with Toronto. I think those are all good things. The unfortunate thing, and I try to be realistic about it because this is sports dialogue now. Sports dialogue, unfortunately, has turned into a lot of people screaming at each other all the time and not listening and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Here's the best scenario for Caitlyn Clark, if she's not on this Olympic team, is that she will be in the All-Star game and they face the Olympic team. That could be a darn good team. Arike Gumbuale, Nneka Ogwumike, as I mentioned before. The last time that happened in 2021, they beat the Olympic team. They're pretty motivated to say, hey, okay, we're staying home, we're going to beat you. So that's an opportunity for her to play against the Olympians. And then you know what? She needs some time off. She has been going. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world if she has a few weeks to not be at the center of this hurricane that she's been in. Those are all positives.
Let's not forget the WNBA didn't do the Fever a ton of favors with their early season schedule. Lots of games against some of the best in the league. I mean, she has been, I hate to use the word pummeled after that foul a week or so ago, but it's been a hard start for Caitlyn Clark in the Fever.
It has. And, it's one thing I would say is, and this because you've covered so many different sports. There is a rookie initiation that goes on, and the fact that Caitlyn and Angel, that generation of players is the first to benefit from NIL, and they're coming into the league as millionaires. That never happened before. Yeah, and some of the players are saying the right things, like whatever, we're happy to athletes are they're the most competitive human beings on the face of the planet.
Right.
And somebody they know has a shoe deal and they didn't get one, they're going to want to knock that player on their butt. That's just athletes. So I think Caitlyn and Angel have both, had really hard fouls against them. And they're both, I don't necessarily like that this happens, but it is part of sports. They're both going to learn from it because they're hyper competitive people. And this is going to be a really hard season. You knew this was going to be a hard season for Caitlyn. Fever haven't been good in a long time. She's got a lot on her shoulders. Yeah. She's got so much attention, and people are using her for arguments that she has nothing to do with. I mean, you know this, Jenny. This turned into a culture war thing that has nothing. Right. She's just like a symbol that has nothing to do with it, and that's hard. She's 22. Yeah. I think she's handled it fantastic, and I think when this whole season's over, if I were her, I would go to the prettiest island in the quietest place in the entire planet and just not do anything for a while. Yeah. That'll be good for her as well.
Yeah. Man, you're exactly right, because you've alluded to it a couple of times, this media landscape, which, as I said when we first started, this is what we've seen in the last year or so with Caitlyn Clark is growth and attention for women's basketball, something like it has never seen before. And yet with the more media, some of it has been just super loud. Some of it has even been vulgar, Michael. I mean, about this whole Caitlyn Clark situation, whether it's the hard foul or this national team thing. What do you make of it? I mean, there's that belief that, all press is good press, but what's the sense of just how this is impacting women's basketball?
I wish it didn't have to be this way, because I think it's hard. I can't imagine from a mental health standpoint what this is like for 22-year-olds to deal with.
Yeah.
And you can say, oh, well, guess what? She's got $28 million shoe deal. It's time to deal with it. All the money in the world doesn't make your everyday life when you're being discussed constantly on social media. And when Caitlyn says she doesn't follow it, I really believe her. She was like that in college, and Iowa as a team was like that. They all really tried to tune out of it. There's no way you can not know what's going on, though. And that's what I worry about is, for her or for Angel or for any of these kids, they are still kids. And, you're a mom and you've covered sports a long time, and sometimes there's no way to protect athletes. There just isn't. Like, obviously, you're even in college, you have to just sort of face the music, and you hope you have good people around you, and you hope you have that sense that you'll get through it. I had an interesting conversation with Kelsey Plum, Jenny, about this, because Kelsey was a number one pick. Yeah. She had the scoring record, NCAA scoring record, before Caitlyn came into the league, kind of, got her butt kicked more than once. I mean, and she did. She wasn't under the same scrutiny because the magnification of the women's game has changed. But one of the things Kelsey said to me was, and I think she's tried to reach out to Caitlyn a little bit and say this, is just get through this year. Your rookie year is always going to be the hardest, and you're going to look back on it and say, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah.
But you get through it. The dialogue is hard, but again, that. You've been in many firestorms of dialogue about so many sports. Should Oklahoma have the College World Series? Now that's suddenly turned into,
yeah, right.
That's turned into like a giant Twitter controversy. Not you know what I mean? Not Oklahoma, but Oklahoma City, right? It's like that's right. Everything can be turned into this giant controversy, and I think the difference is, and I think people are smart enough to know this, the people who yell the loudest aren't always right. In fact, a lot of times they aren't.
Yeah.
But you have to sort of listen to a lot of different viewpoints, and like I said, sometimes realize there's no easy answer to the national team. There's no easy answer to how do you make it easier for rookies. In some ways you don't. It's kind of what they have to go through. And then you hope that these kids, again, have a good support system and realize that they can't control what's said on Twitter or X, or Instagram or on ESPN First Take or whatever. Right. They can't control it. Right. So try not to let it bother them. Boy, that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. As you think about USA Basketball, their Olympic team decision, as you think about the WNBA, and obviously they've found themselves in situations and how to handle things with Caitlyn and some other rookies as well.
Yeah.
What sort of grade would you give those two entities as you think about the Olympic team that was selected, these early weeks of the WNBA season? I mean, I don't know about you, but I still look at that Olympic team and think, I don't know who's beaten these 12. I mean, to me, that seems like a really good team. But just their handling both of those entities of the situation can't be perfect. But how do you think they both handled it?
One of the issues, I think, that if you go back to the root of USA Basketball or any national governing body in the United States, is their earliest origin is with amateur sports. And even though we've been in a period now for over 30 years where the Olympics, opened it up to professional athletes, that amateur route to me sometimes still really shows up. You talk to Jen Rosati today. She says, okay, our selection committee was tasked with the best possible team for this coaching staff at this time in this tournament. And it's not that they would say it's not that we don't respect the power of marketing, but that's not what we're tasked with doing. USA Basketball, at least from the women's standpoint, to me, has been much more about, hey, we'll win the medals. That's what we're here to do. And again, that's where I think there's a little bit of how do you don't want to change their culture, because so much about their culture is good.
Yeah.
But and I try to get this, to the degree that I try to explain anything on Twitter sometimes, but try to get this point across that you can say that, but it is a WNBA product.
Mm-hmm.
All the players are WNBA players. In this case, all the coaches except Carol Lawson is a WNBA coach or GM, and she was a WNBA player. She spent time in the pros with the NBA. So it's almost inseparable, USA Basketball and the WNBA. Mm-hmm. WNBA, like any pro sports, league, exists for eyeballs. That's why it exists. They don't play just because you have to play, right? You play because it's an entertainment option and people are going to play. Right. I always joke about that, Jenny. People have to pick up garbage. People have to fix, the utilities. People don't have to play basketball or any of this, but people want them to.
I really want them to continue that,
yeah,
but
exactly. But it's like you have to look at it's a business. So does USA Basketball not think like a business? Well, the WNBA is. I guess that kind of goes to your question, how they handled it. I don't know. I'm not sure how they could have done differently unless USA changes a little bit of how it picks a team and you have a quote unquote general manager, which I think the men, went with that right. model. And if that were the case, maybe they would have looked at this a little differently, because there was another option, which was 3-on-3.
Yeah.
That's 4 more spots. 3-on-3 is a little different, though, in terms of you have to, a lot of your spots, I think multiple of your spots have to go to people who have the point system, right? So you have to have some people that just earn points. But you have wiggle room in, as long as somebody's played in a tournament in the last, I believe it's the last calendar year. Mm-hmm. So what happens sometimes in some places is they say, let's just get you to one tournament. So you have a ranking and then you're eligible.
Yeah.
Would that have been a way? Now, again, would that have taken a spot away from one of the 4 3-on-3 people who really deserved it? Yes. Yeah. But would that, if USA Basketball had been thinking of this completely or not completely, but largely from a marketing standpoint, and said, how many shirts are we going to sell with Caitlyn Clark's name on the back? How much money can we make out of her being an Olympian? Let's figure out a way to do it that doesn't completely screw up our culture. Maybe they could have done that, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And again, you can look at that and say, should they have, should they not have? It didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that there'll be another Caitlyn Clark related firestorm coming. So we know you'll be there to cover it for ESPN.com and ESPN. Where can people find your stuff? What do you got coming up that people can look forward to?
Well, interestingly, we will have the other interesting thing coming up this week is it's the rematch between the quote unquote super teams from last year. First time that New York Liberty and Las Vegas Aces will play each other is this year, or this coming weekend, Saturday. I'll be in Las Vegas for that.
Great.
And that game will be interesting, Jenny, because the Aces, despite all their Olympians and everything else, they're 5-4 right now. So they've had a little bit of a struggle so far, the two-time WNBA champs. We'll have stuff on that matchup. Again, the other interesting thing to watch for, my colleague Alexa Philippou will be writing about this, is who's going to be on that WNBA All-Star team that faces the Olympic team. That, you know, that game's coming up in July, and all of a sudden I think that turns into that can be a really good thing for the WNBA. A lot of people are going to say, hey, we want to see how the Olympic team does against the people that aren't on the Olympic team. So I think people will be able to see that stuff this week on ESPN.com.
Hey, that WNBA All-Star game, way more exciting than the NBA All-Star game. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
If there's one NBA game I know I can skip every year, it's that one. Sorry, All-Stars. I don't watch that one.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, Michael Voepel, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I hope you come back again.
Oh, I'd love to. Good seeing you again. And you don't look hardly a day younger than when you were at the University of Kansas back in, I believe I first might have met you in 1996. Can it be that long? It is.
Been a few minutes. A few minutes. I might have a few more gray hairs now than I did then, but don't we all?
Yes, we do. So, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Michael. That's all the time we have for now, but please subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Substack. It's easy and it's free, but if you want to support my work financially, I would appreciate that too. You can do that via my Substack, jennicarlson.substack.com. A quick word of thanks to my video dream team, Jacqueline Musgrove and Michael Lane. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.